A very good morning to my friends and family from Brumley Baptist Church. It is the 10th of July, and we are gathering together online or in person. Hopefully, you'll be with us in church service in just a little while. But we're gathering together to study God's Word again. And this week, I have to admit, is the passage that I've probably been looking forward to as much as anything when we were going to do 1st and 2nd Kings. This is Elijah and the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, and it's 1 Kings 18, 25 through 39. The title is Proven, Only God is Worthy of Worship. We're on session 6, page number 55. If you have your book, your quarterly along with you, and here are those verses together. Companies hiring a new employee will usually look for work experience. What have you done in the past? And sometimes you even get paid more because of that experience you've had in the past. Well, the reason I bring that up is because all of us have years of experience with God being faithful to us over and over again. And so that should account for something. Elijah has been introduced in 1 Kings just a chapter earlier in chapter 17. And the way he's introduced is he tells evil King Ahab, hey, it's not going to rain. There'll be no dew. There'll be no precipitation until I say so. And so he is showing that God is with him, that he is the prophet of God, and that God will work through him and send messages through him. Now, opposed to that is the god Baal, B-A-A-L. And he is obviously the idol, the false god, the opposite of everything that Jehovah is. And so you kind of have this conflict. The worshipers of Baal believe that he controlled the weather, that he controlled everything. And so, there's kind of this tension. Well, after 3 years from chapter 17 through chapter 18, Elijah goes in chapter 18, verse 1, and tells the king, hey, it's going to rain again because God has said it's going to rain again. And it did. And so all the prophets of Baal are, in a tizzy, so to speak, because it looks like their God, who they believe controls the weather, has been one-upped. And that's a problem, obviously, for them. And so they want to prove their God. And so Elijah says, all right, let's just go head to head, face to face. Let's settle this, as maybe an athlete would say, on the field. Let's just go at each other and we'll see who wins. And so that's what's going to happen in our story today. Let's start with Futility, chapter 18, verse 25. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, since you're so numerous, choose for yourselves one bull and prepare it first. Then call on the name of your God, but don't light the fire. So they took the bull that he gave them, prepared it, and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, Baal, answer us. But there was no sound. No one answered. Then they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah mocked them. He said, shout loudly, for he's a god. Maybe he's thinking it over. Maybe he's wandered away. Maybe he's on the road. Perhaps he's sleeping and will wake up. They shouted loudly and cut themselves with knives and spears according to their custom until blood gushed all over them. All afternoon, they kept on raving until the offering, until the evening sacrifice, but there was no sound, no one answered, no one paid attention. We know as followers of God, this is going to be futile. They don't know that. They don't know what's going to happen. So Elijah says, here's what we're going to do. Get your best prophets. Let's go and make an altar, and we'll see which God responds to our request to show himself. Well, of course, Baal's not real, so he's not going to be able to show himself. And Elijah knows this and has faith in God that he will show himself in this particular situation. So it says they took the bull, they put it on there, and for hours they chant, Baal, answer us. Baal, help us. Baal, respond. And just over and over, they cut themselves with stones trying to appease this fake God. And Elijah mocks them, verse 27, said maybe he's not thinking it over. Maybe he's gone on a journey. Maybe he's on the road. Perhaps he's sleeping. There's some belief that in the Hebrew, one of the translations might even mean maybe he's in the bathroom. He's relieving himself and he needs to come back for a minute. He's gone aside, so to speak, which, this just shows me the sense of humor sometimes that God has through his prophets. What a funny thing, shout louder. Maybe your God's in the bathroom right now. Anyway, Futility is the title because this is futile. You can yell and scream and cut yourself and do all that you want to, but it's a futile proposition. Sadly, I've seen so many recently in our culture, in our country, do this with the abortion laws. Well, I won't celebrate 4th of July. I want this, I want that. And just this foolishness over the right to kill babies, the most defenseless among us. That is futility too. Their God is Baal, and it's futile to call out to a God who's not real. Preparation. So now Elijah steps forward. Elijah said to the people, "Come near me." So all the people approached him, and he repaired the Lord's altar that had been torn down. He took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying that Israel will be your name. He built an altar with the stones in the name of the Lord. He made a trench around the altar large enough to hold 4 gallons. Next, he arranged the wood, cut up the bull, placed it on the wood. He said, "Fill the water pots and pour it on the offering to be burned and on the wood." Then he said a second time. They did it a second time. And then he said a third time. They did it a third time. So the water ran around the altar and even filled the trench with water. Notice first preparation, he gets rid of the other altar and he builds it with the right purpose and with the right focus. He builds an altar to the Lord in the name of the Lord. He builds it the way the Lord would have him, with the 12 stones, reminding everyone symbolically of the 12 tribes of Israel. He does everything the way God intended him to do these things. Once he has done that, he prepares the burnt offering to the Lord. He cuts up the bull, he places it on the altar, but then he takes it a step further. He tells them, douse it 3 times, take the water pots and pour it on the wood, pour it on the altar, pour it on the sacrifice, pour it on everything. It fills up this trench. So now the water is mud everywhere. There's water around the trench in a moat sort of thing. I mean, this is like the opposite of what you would do if you wanted something to burn. You know, if your wood's wet, doesn't matter. It won't burn. Wood's got to be dry. I remember my papa, they had a wood burning stove at their house. And that was the thing. You had to keep that firewood dry somewhere so that when you went out and got it and put it in the stove, you would have burning wood. Wet wood would smoke and maybe smolder a bit, but it would never burn. And Elijah's just doused his multiple times. At the time for the offering, the evening sacrifice, the prophet Elijah approached the altar and said, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob," or Israel, "today let it be known that you're God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that at your word I have done all these things. Answer me, Lord. Answer me so that this people will know that you, the Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back." Then the Lord's fire fell and consumed the burnt offering, and the wood and the stones and the dust, and it licked up the water that was in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell face down and said, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God." Amen, right? Man, what a show. What an incredible sight this must have been. Elijah steps forward and says, "God, only you are God." Psalm 83:18, there is only one living God, and it's Jehovah. There is no other God. It's time for the offering for the evening sacrifice, which is about 3 p.m. Everything has been doused. Everything is soaked up. The water, it is wet. But when Elijah speaks, the Lord's fire falls, and it doesn't just burn the wood. It says it consumes everything that there is. It consumes the offering. It consumes the altar. It consumes the water. Remember, the Lord, our God, is an all-consuming fire. And that's exactly what happens here. The heading for this section is response. And I think that's so perfect. What a response this is, right? What an incredible response from an incredible God. What can we learn? All false gods, all of them, whether they are in the heavens or in something in this world, power, money, influence, they'll all lead to disappointment and emptiness. If you ever notice, some of those people I talked about that want change or this right or that right, they're always very angry. Part of what their anger is fueled from is a deep emptiness. Now, they won't probably admit that to you because that would be admitting failure and defeat, but they're always angry. Why? Because they're empty inside. God is honored when we express trust in his power. That's exactly what Elijah did, and it's what we should do as well. We should trust that our God will always show up. Why? Because God answers the humble prayers of his servants. He always does, always has, and he always will. Next week, 1 Kings 19, 9 through 18. The idea of hope. Focusing on God's promise will bring us out of despair. Elijah's going to go from this great victory, this mountaintop experience, to literally a cave where he's going to say, God, I'm done. Just let me die. Doesn't take long to go from the mountaintop to the valley, but we're going to find out there's hope in the valley from 1 Kings 19, 9 through 18. Hope you can join me near the halfway point of our study this summer in 1st and 2nd Kings. Thank you for being with me today. Again, I would love to see you at Brumley Baptist Church, 10 a.m. on Sunday morning, 6 p.m. on Sunday nights. We'd love to have you with us anytime in the near future. Until then, have a good and godly day and go serve your King.